3,500 images contained within the Holtermann collection, almost half are studio portraits. And you would be hard-pressed to find a single example with a smile on their face. And the comment is always made, they were all so serious back then, weren't they? But nothing could be further than the truth. The reason that people seemed to be so serious back then was not due to a lack of personality, but otherwise the long exposure time during the photographic process. Each photo could take up to 8 to 10 seconds, meaning that the slightest movement during this time would result in the blurring and fuzziness of the image. To overcome this problem, the subject was required to remain completely motionless. It was all about concentration. Following this video, go to a mirror and stare at yourself, and remain completely still for 10 seconds and see just how serious you look. This randomly chosen portrait from the collection is identified as order file A2823387, number 4/box18/number 263. This static photograph, as with all the photographs from the Holtermann collection, has laid dormant in the vaults of the State Library of New South Wales in Sydney since their rediscovery over 70 years ago. Like an unmarked grave, these two people only seem to be known by the ID number allocated, but who were they? Another common misconception about people back then was that they all looked quite unattractive. To prove this incorrect, let's focus the attention on the young lady in the photograph. Only known at this stage as A2823387, and to break her from her frozen cryogenic state, we need to research who she was. As more and more details are revealed about her identity, the more her black and white prison will dissolve, and along with it, the 10-second pressure of maintaining a motionless posture, therefore revealing not just beauty, but also a happy personality. Stepping back, and by studying the overall scene, you will notice what seems to be random scratches at the top section of the photograph. However, it can be revealed that these scratches are deliberate markings on the reverse side of the negative, made by the photographer at the point when the photograph was taken. As mentioned, this etching is inscribed on the reverse side of the glass plate, so, in order to decipher it, we need to reverse the image to reveal its nature. We can now identify the subjects as Mr. Poole and Lady. It's safe to assume that this image was taken at the American and Australasian Photographic Studios on Tambaroora Street in the historic gold mining town of Hill End, New South Wales, Australia, in about 1872 or thereabouts. From here, we can now refer to historical records regarding the people and their occupations from Hill End and the neighbouring town of Tambaroora. The record shows that there have been 3 families under the name of Poole living and working in the district between 1855 and 1876. However, as the photograph was taken between 1872 and about 1873, the logical gentleman would be Charles John Poole. Charles worked as a miner at the nearby gold mine of Dun Dun, and not far from Tambaroora. The record also indicates that he was married and that his wife's name was Ellen. Subsequent and extensive research reveals that she was born Ellen Head. Ellen was born in 1855 in the Australian town of Hobart, Tasmania. It is presumed that she travelled to the mainland with her family soon after, before then arriving on the goldfields of Tambaroora in her mid-teens. It is here, in Tambaroora, that Ellen Head met and married Charles in 1872, where they then became Mr. and Mrs. Poole. By taking her birth date of 1855 and her year of marriage in 1872, we are able to calculate that Ellen was at least just 17, or at most 18 years old when she married Charles. As the portrait is titled Mr. Poole and Lady, we can presume that it was possibly taken soon before their marriage, otherwise it would have been titled Mr. and Mrs. Poole, as with similar portraits in the collection featuring married couples. Despite this, Ellen would have still been just 17, or possibly even 18 when this photograph was taken, hence her youthful appearance. The following year, Ellen gave birth to the first of 10 children on the 12th of June 1873 in Tambaroora. The subsequent demise of the Hill End and Tambaroora goldfields coincides with the birth of her next two children in 1876 and 1878, 247 kilometres to the west in the New South Wales town of Forbes. By further researching the births of her next 8 children, we are able to track her movements for the next 21 years. The Pooles travelled extensively throughout New South Wales, as indicated by the birth of their next child a year later in 1879, and a further 500 kilometres to the north in the town of Burke. By the time they had reached Burke, Ellen was still just 24 years old. She had already given birth to 4 children and had travelled almost 1,000 kilometres, presumably on foot, and all in a constant state of pregnancy. As more and more details are uncovered about her stoic life, the more Ellen begins to come out of her frozen black and white cryogenic chamber, revealing her soft textures and elegant highlights. But if we push further, we may be able to also release her personality that has otherwise eluded her for over 150 years. Between 1879 and 1897, a total of 18 years, Ellen gave birth to a further 6 more children in the towns of Dubbo, then Nyngan, where she had 4 of those children, and her final child in Cobar in 1897, when she was 42 years of age. It was here at Cobar in 1910 where her husband Charles, of 38 years, sadly passed away at 60 years of age, leaving Ellen a widow at 55. So now that the photograph has been finally taken, it's time, Mrs. Poole, to relax and be yourself.
Beautiful.
Beauty is a wonderful asset, but it will only get you so far. To have a beautiful personality is another thing altogether and will get you everywhere. To have both, and whether you were born in 1855 or 2055, you will never be judgmental and hopefully never judged. Ellen Poole, née Head, passed away in her home at Belvoir Street in Surrey Hills, Sydney on the 13th of April 1928. Surrounded by her enormous, loving family. She was 73 years old. May you now finally rest in peace.